The latest throughout the hour tonight. But first, President Trump firing back at claims made by Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi about a potential DACA deal. Now, the president is also saying that the border wall will, in fact, be built. Tonight, weak, incompetent, utterly ineffective Republicans, they are to blame for this current situation. And I will explain that. They are pushing the president into the arms of those people that, frankly, have no good intentions for the president. Also, we'll explain how the GOP needs to get on board with the president's agenda, why Democrats like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi can never be trusted, and how vital it is to the president to keep the promises he made to you. And that's our opening monologue. A colossal failure by congressional Republicans to govern and pass the president's agenda and keep their promises. It's now forcing President Trump to seek out alternative ways to now get things done. Now, what you're watching unfold here is the failure that has literally pushed this president into the arms of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. As we have explained on this show, President Trump is moving at lightning speed. He's checking those things off his list. Remember the dings last week or the week before? All his campaign promises, one by one. Republicans in the House and Senate have zero sense of urgency, no sense of accountability, and even after promising for years and years and years they would deliver for you, the American people, they have not. So with the Republican lawmakers not in his corner, well, the president has few options. He can either wait around for Republicans to get their act together, or he can try to forge ahead on his own, and that means even reaching out to Democrats. So last night, President Trump, he met with Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, and of course, once it was over, they raced with a press release saying in part, quote, "Tonight, Leader Schumer and I had a productive meeting with President Trump where we agreed to a plan to work out an agreement to protect our nation's dreamers from deportation. Now, we insisted that the Bipartisan DREAM Act would be the basis for that protection and that we would review border security measures that didn't include building a wall." Now, the president, he responded this morning. He tweeted out, quote, "No deal was made last night on DACA. Massive border security would have to be agreed to in exchange for consent. Now, it would also be subject to a vote. The wall, which is already under construction in the form of new renovation of old and existing fences and walls, will continue to be built." And then this afternoon, the president, he responded further, and he shot down the claim that a deal was in place and that the border wall would not be built. Here's the president in his own words, not Chuck and Nancy's. Watch.
And a deal. In fact, they just put out a statement. They didn't say that at all. Now, we have to have an understanding that whether it's in the budget or some other vehicle, in a fairly short period of time, the wall will be funded. Otherwise, we're not doing any deals. Now, we're not looking at citizenship. We're not looking at amnesty. We're looking at allowing people to stay here. We're working with everybody, Republican. We're working with Democrat. I just spoke with Paul Ryan. He's on board. Everybody's on board. They want to do something. We're not talking about amnesty. We're talking about taking care of people that were brought here, people that have done a good job and were not brought here of their own volition. But very importantly, what we want, we have to have a wall. If the wall is going to be obstructed when we need the funds at a little bit later date, we'll be determining how much we need. Then we're not doing anything. Right, what we're doing is we're doing it in conjunction with the Republicans. We have a very, very good relationship with a lot of people. A lot of people want this to happen. They expect it to happen. And we'll see if it happens. But we'll only do it if we get extreme security, if we get not only surveillance, but everything that goes along with surveillance. And ultimately, we have to have the wall. If we don't have the wall, we're doing nothing.
If we don't have the wall, we're doing nothing. And then he said they were not talking about amnesty. Now, later in the day, President Trump doubled down when he got back to the White House. Let's look at this.
Just so you understand, we're renovating massive sections of wall right now, and essentially it'll be brand new. We're going to be able to use that. And if the Democrats aren't going to approve it, then we're not going to do what they want. We're not talking about amnesty at all. We have not talked about amnesty. There'll be no amnesty. We're not talking about that. DACA now and the wall very soon. But the wall will happen. Thank you.
Now, since last night, I always suspected, I know the president, and I know him pretty well. I've interviewed him many, many times, and I assumed he was negotiating last night, and he needs to continue to set the record straight. Why? Because Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi's statement, it's beyond disturbing. They are essentially claiming this, that the Democrats, they get everything they want, they get DACA, and the president doesn't get his wall. Here's the one thing that everyone needs to understand about Schumer and Pelosi. They don't like this president. They can't stand him. They want the president to fail, and they certainly don't have his best interest in heart or in mind. And Schumer and Pelosi, they only care about scoring cheap political points. Why? Because they want to gain seats in 2018. Now, remember, since 2009, Democrats have been getting destroyed at the ballot box, losing the presidency, 13 Senate seats, 64 House seats, 13 governorships, and 33 state houses. And as soon as it doesn't serve them politically, I can promise you, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, they're going to turn around and stab the president in the back. That's a fact. And also, in fact, it wasn't that long ago when Schumer and Pelosi were just trashing the president. Let's remind everybody.
The president's decision to end DACA was heartless and it was brainless.
We all agree that President Trump's decision to end DACA is a despicable act of political cowardice.
President Trump did a tweet last night and a tweet this morning. Not presidential.
He doesn't know right from wrong, true from false, American patriotism from white nationalism.
I'd like to say a few words about Donald Trump Jr. The emails are the end of the idea pushed by the administration and the president that there is absolutely no evidence of intent to coordinate or collude.
Donald Trump is a job loser. The president's fitness for office is something that is being called into question. I'm very worried about his fitness.
Now, the president, as he reiterated many times today, he is insisting this border wall be built, which he absolutely should be doing because it was a massive campaign promise he made. He needs to keep his promises. I would argue otherwise there will be severe political consequences for him and the entire Republican Party. Now, if the president doesn't get funding and get it up front first, I'd argue he's never going to get it. Let me be clear. If the wall is not constructed, the president risks losing his entire base. And it's not a matter of if. The base will leave. That's plain and simple. And that, by the way, is what Democrats want. They want President Trump to be isolated. Why? So they can bludgeon him more politically. Now, President Trump needs to keep pushing for that border wall and the funding. And he promised you, the American people, over and over again that he would get that built. For example, remember this.
We are building a wall on the southern border, which is absolutely necessary. Believe me, if we have to close down our government, we're building that wall. We will build a great wall along the southern border, and Mexico will pay for the wall. Build that wall, build that wall, build that wall, build that wall. They said, the president of Mexico said they will not, under any circumstances, pay for the wall. They said to me, what is your comment? I said, the wall just got 10 feet higher. It's true.
All right, here's where we are. The president must insist on the complete border wall funding now, or guess what? I'd argue it's never coming. Now, no one believes that the wall will be built later, if in fact they get their DACA deal now up front. It's the same old Washington, D.C. sewer swamp game. Democrats love to play this. They always promise spending cuts in exchange for tax increases. But guess what? You never get the spending cuts, and you always get the tax increase. And the same goes for immigration. We always get the amnesty, the concession. You never get the reform. You never get the border security that's promised. The Democrats, they want DACA and then amnesty for all illegal immigrants. They don't care about the wall. They never have, never will. They don't want to build the wall. So the president needs to act with great, great caution here, because the Democrats have burned Republicans over the decades way too many times with these so-called bipartisan deals. Now, also, if the wall doesn't end up being built, President Trump, he will be put in great political danger. Let me give you a quick political history lesson to illustrate this point. You may remember back in 1988, when then candidate George H.W. Bush made this promise during the Republican National Convention.
Read my lips. No new taxes.
A very bold promise, and voters, they took George Herbert Walker Bush at his word, propelling him to a landslide victory over Michael Dukakis. Then, once he got into office,